Hey everyone, welcome to another Talent Talk with Ed and I. Ed, love these. We need to do these more often.
Agreed, Lewis. It's been a while since we've done our last one, and I think you've sort of been doing some other videos, and I've been doing my own videos, and it's great because you're in the UK, I'm in the US, and we can actually bring the worlds together on one video.
Yeah. No, we go hard on content. Absolutely, that's good. Educational content, and we like talking about things that we do, which is great. Yeah, the international thing's amazing, isn't it? Because you kind of get like when you're in a country, you kind of almost you just get so caught up in all of the stuff, don't you? And I think for me, and we do like daily catch ups with our team and stuff, and our team are like literally all over the planet. And one of the things I enjoy most about it is hearing from different people what's going on in their space, because it's so nice just to get a more like global view on things. Like it's
Absolutely. Interesting because you're situated where you are, and because I'm situated where I am. Maybe we can go from talent talk to global talent talk, right?
yeah,
And give our perspectives from our local regions in terms of what's happening in the market, what's happening with our clients, what's happening with the way companies are asking, candidates, to return to office. Like they're regionally, there's so many things that are so different between the US and what's happening in the UK. And we can certainly give perspectives.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even we're talking a lot about pay transparency and just even on pay is interesting, because a lot of conversation where you are about in certain states you have to publish the pay range on job descriptions, and you're not allowed to ask candidates what they're currently earning, things like that. Whereas in Europe, you can ask people what they're earning. It's often odd if you don't, if a candidate doesn't reply, with what they're earning. Like 95% of people will share. You don't have to publish pay ranges. So it's really interesting kind of stark differences between how one recruits in the US versus the UK, which is really interesting. On that then, so how's the state? Let's talk about the state of the market. Obviously we can talk about it from our own perspective. So how are you seeing it in the US? Maybe like the last kind of 6 months. Like what are you kind of feeling and sensing and stuff?
Sure. I think it's a great place to start. I think 6 months ago, a lot of companies there were many industries that were sort of moving in a very conservative way. Layoffs were very prevalent in the technology space. But you had other sectors 6 months ago that were absolutely booming, right? Healthcare, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing. In reality, those industries have not let up at all. And a matter of fact, those industries continue to hire. And people have asked me why, and it's a simple answer. Within manufacturing, within healthcare, within pharmaceuticals, you have technology being integrated within those industries heavily, right? You have companies that are going through digital transformations. You have industries as a whole going through transformation, integrating more tech. So for me, what I've seen is that the economy 6 months ago was doing well for some industries. For other industries like financial services and tech focused, it was a bit conservative, right? 6 months ago. What we're seeing now is the start of, sort of a second wave of, in my mind, it is going to be the great candidate movement, right? On part two. And I put out a news article, I put out a newsletter, about this. And are companies ready for this next wave, right? With the Fed announcing that the market is we're no longer looking down the barrel of a recession. And so you had industries like manufacturing, pharma, healthcare already, limited in terms of the talent. Um, and then you had people that were laid off being absorbed by some of those industries. Oh, let's not forget the semiconductor industry as well, which has been doing extraordinary. But now, with the Fed announcing, clients are starting to reach out and say, "Hey, can you help us on these couple of searches? Hey, let's set up some time at the end of August. We're about to approve our headcount." So the end of throughout Q3, throughout Q4, clients are reaching out and starting to engage and starting. I'm now seeing more talent acquisition jobs starting to open up, which is a great barometer.
Yeah.
The recruiter, it's sort of, instead of Return of the Jedi, it's going to be Return of the Recruiter, right?
Yeah.
So clients are starting to really open their eyes and notice. And I put this in my news article about a week or two ago. The Gallup poll mentions that 50% of global employees are going to make a move in the upcoming quarters. And then, it breaks down by demographics, right? And so it's really interesting. So there's going to be a lot of movement in the market. Unemployment is still under 4% here in the United States. The GDP is up. The consumer spending index is up. Inflation is cooling. The perfect tsunami is forming for the next hiring wave. And the question is, are companies ready? And I don't think they are. I think the early adopters of the data, they're starting to reach out to individuals like us and saying, "Hey, join us for these conversations. Here's the head count that we have approved." But are the early adopters, and the early adopters, the early bird gets the worm. So the people that are out in the market right now, the sort of that last chunk of people that were laid off, they're going to get absorbed. And then what's going to happen at the end of Q3 and the end of Q4 and going into 24 is that companies are going to have to start paying a premium for talent, right? More search firm work. So if they, if companies don't get ahead of the curve, those companies that were being conservative, those industries that were being conservative, they're going to be behind the 8 ball and they're going to have to pay more for a cost per hire. So it's very interesting in terms of what is forming.
That's interesting. So it's kind of like, to sum that up a little, it's like you feel like now we're kind of either at the bottom or starting to kind of get back now to hiring. Because definitely, I think the last, I don't know, let's say 6-7 months has been stodgy, right? Like, I love that word, stodgy, because it's been, it's been quite variable. Like, you're right, like quite a lot of industries have been hiring. There's been a bunch of clients of ours in life sciences and manufacturing where they've just been, they've been going for it. And then others, like financial services, earlier on, the tech firms, that they were making the notable redundancies and stuff. And also, I think you're right. And many of these folks that got made redundant have been rehired now. Maybe there's some left that haven't. A good barometer, you're right, is TA, because if you go back a year or so, I mean, wow, like TA salaries shot up, companies were hiring, from what is it, like from like mid 2020 until, like kind of probably a year ago, it was just everyone was hiring and TA was like crazy. And then you start to see the TA function get cut, many TA folks were on the market, still are. And so it's good that you're starting to see them come back, because you're right, like a lot of firms are starting to ramp up again, and obviously they don't have the in-house capability like they used to, and so we're then obviously seeing that. I spoke with a client of ours today, actually, really lovely guy, head of exec search in a firm, I won't mention the name, and we were just talking about it, and he said it's interesting, the last 6 months, and we were just chatting and stuff, and he said what a great barometer for him is how many agency recruiters reach out to him for a chat. And he said, like, because a lot of recruiters, they're quite bad, and I'm quoting this guy, so you say, no, don't hate me for this, but, there's many bad recruiters. and just bad in terms of the way that they stay in touch with people. They don't do it often enough. And so this guy felt they only reach out, I think the royal they, right? But 95% of they only reach out when they want something. And so for him, it's a really good barometer of actually there's not so much in the market the last 6 months. He needs a LinkedIn message, a LinkedIn, you know. So I think that's a really interesting barometer. Second interesting barometer for me, and Elon Musk might be ruining this, but you have this like Twitternomics, you know, where I think a lot of like governments have relied on Twitter for live data. And so if you look about like recruiting and jobs, you know, a lot of algorithms, right? You can use an algorithm to scrape all these publicly available tweets for certain keywords. So like if you want to know are people being made redundant right now, you want to go looking for tweets that are mentioning redundancy, pink slip, or, you know, lost my job or whatever it is. And it's very interesting live data. And I think, you know, over the last year, you've seen it. And I think now you're starting to actually find that a lot of companies are struggling to get the right folks now. You know, if they are hiring, they're not finding it so easy. And some people think, well, hold on a sec, there are lots of redundancies. It's going to be really easy to hire now. Not true.
Right. Right. And just because there are redundancies, I mean, it doesn't mean that you're going to find the candidate that's going to, you know, you're not finding the quality candidate that you want for that role, right? I mean, there's no real guarantee that you're going to find the right hire. I do feel, you know, in my mind, I mean, to your point, I mean, we're starting to have conversations here in the US, you know, and rightly so, with some very smart TA, HR, leadership individuals that are trying to get ahead of the curve, right? And they're really preparing us as a search firm. Here's the head count that we're going to be hiring for. Here are the people that we want you to meet within the organization, right? And these are the relationships, and this is where we're going to have the growth. Those are the smarter, proactive companies that are taking those steps to bring us in early into the game. Now, we're not going to hire every position, but we're going to focus on key specific hires for the organization. And, you know, when we do good work, you know, and if there are other roles that are critical, we'll have the ability to do that work as well. But it's all about getting out ahead, getting out early, ahead of the gate, right? And getting out the gate really fast. And for those firms that are doing that, you know, kudos to them, because, you know, you're preparing for, you see the next tsunami coming. And, you know, so I would be surprised if we see more companies laying off, considering, I mean, not to say it's not going to happen, but, you know, I would be really surprised. And if they are doing that, then they may be putting themselves in a very bad situation.
Yeah. No, I agree. And if I think about, like, if we look at like kind of the UK and Europe a little bit as well, I think also in terms of how we're seeing it here, we've seen, I'd say it's broadly been similar, you know, like the last 6 months, similar to how you described. We've seen a good uptick in new searches, which has been really interesting. Again, we've got low unemployment here. You know, again, firms struggle to find the right people for the right jobs. You know, so all of those kind of challenges remain. So, but, you know, seeing now, I think like we're at the bottom of this like odd period, because we had like, you know, just crazy amount of hiring. I mean, so many people moved last year. You know, like I did a poll on LinkedIn a few weeks ago asking whether or not have you moved this year. You know, not many people have actually moved this year in relation to last year, which is also a really interesting thing, because again, a lot of people moved like a year or two ago, or let's say a year ago. You know, then you're going to get settled in and you want to start doing a good job. And so again, remember, so many people moved the last year or two. that this, this period people have settled, plus people have got made redundant in the last 6 to 12 months as well. And I think now we're kind of, let's say at the bottom of it now, or just kind of coming out. And I think, as you said, like even here, I would say this like kind of the last quarter of the year, January, maybe next year. I mean, everything's so hard to predict because who knows what else might happen between now and then. But it just feels like now we're getting, we're kind of getting there. So yeah, if you are out of work right now, or, you're hiring and stuff, I think it's, like it's looking positive, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, but hopefully with a little dose of realism, just for good measure. and, I mean, obviously we're on the kind of the front line. So, we are speaking with folks, companies that are hiring or not, and just get a kind of sense of their plans. And I think for me, I'm cautiously very optimistic about the next quarter to 6 months or so. If I look at it like that. So,
yeah, agreed. I Lewis, 2 years ago, was it about 2 years ago? There were more recruiting jobs than there were engineering jobs. Right now, as we know, right, engineering is one of those spaces that there's never enough talent. I never thought I would see a moment in time where there would be more recruitment jobs open, there were tech jobs. And I think this is what's going to happen once again, right? And for those companies that have done redundancy, laid off and looked at and cut people due to the redundancies, I think there's a level of caution. Candidates are going to remember, right? Candidates are going to remember, and it's going to impact your branding. Candidates are going to remember that during a time of the great fear, because and the reality was most of the action that happened from layoffs to, the tech companies, client spend dropping, was based on fear. In 2020, they announced recession. In 2021, they announced recession. In 2022, they announced recession. 2023, almost towards the end of the year, we say, okay, no recession, right? So all those companies that took action on their internal employees and, cut people to raise capital, to raise liquid capital, candidates are going to remember that experience. And, it's going to be really interesting to see when those companies need to hire again, how that's going to...
It's huge. Oh no, it's huge. I mean, people do remember how you make them feel. And that great resignation, I always said it was a great resignation from bad companies with bad cultures who treated their people badly. Because there was a lot of other companies that didn't have that problem, because like you had COVID and a lot of people, they didn't even take a breath. It was right, quick, let's cut. Or, on the one side, there was like, oh, we really value our team. Oh my God, like we think it's going to be really bad. Sorry, here's the, here's a little bit of severance pay and, see you later. So there was a lot of that, and people do remember. And what it's like. People speak about bad experiences way more than good ones. So you see that a lot, and then you realize obviously a company is, they are loyal to their shareholders, and if they need to get rid of you, see you later. And there's no such thing as job security, that myth of job security. So you're right. Like there's just all of that that's gone on. And it's very recent, and people remember, and it governs their, what they're looking for, I guess, in their next role, or what's important to them, or, maybe even think more carefully about who am I actually joining? Like, let me do my due diligence properly, like, okay, sure, I'll give you some references, but I want references on you. What are you like as a leader? Let me see your accounts. Things like that, because then the other thing is like, for those listed companies, great. But there was a whole raft of VC-backed firms this last year, 12 to 18 months ago, that treated people like really badly. You had firms retracting offers, like they resigned in the 2 weeks in the US, I suppose, in the 2 weeks before they started, offers rescinded. It's a lot of bad behavior, and a lot of these VC funds, they stop the money. Most tech firms, they're not making money. You know, they're losing every month. They have to re-raise every 18 months. They have to have an event. There's just a lot of stuff. I'll be interested to see whether the, you know, the carrot of equity or whatever is still works. Because, you know, like it was a real big thing. It's like, oh, I've got, you know, this great tech firm. They're worth like 10 billion and they're going to list, and, you know, and then, you know, you see them, you know, last week and they're like not even worth anything anymore. So has it made people more cautious and do their due diligence more, or are they still going to buy into the, you know, the kind of the marketing that they get sold by some of these companies? For me, that's going to just be a real interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, let's get the popcorn, right? Let's get the popcorn.
Yeah. So, you know,
I think the market. I think the market's going to remember their experiences with a lot of these companies, and they're also going to remember the brands, right? That, you know, the brands that are affiliated with these companies, right? So it's going to be a really interesting time. How, you know, curious, Lewis, how has, you know, there's a topic that, you know, how has return to the office impacted what's happening outside the U.S.? I'm just kind of curious, because here in the U.S., it's starting to swing back. You know, it's not going anywhere, and it's starting to swing back to, you know, more hybrid, more remote. I'm working on a number of searches right now that are remote. And some companies have really recognized that remote is the best way to get the best talent, keep your diversity numbers up, and really, you know, open up the candidate pool here in the US. And we're starting to see it go back. You know, we had a little push about returning back to the office, and that worked for a bit, but I'm starting to see more hybrid and remote. Are you seeing the same thing in the UK? What's the situation?
No, I wouldn't say so. I don't think it's like that. I think it's much more variable here. I mean, and I would break into a few different kind of buckets almost, because, you know, we do a lot of, you know, we do exec recruiting. So we're doing senior leadership roles, and we recruit for a range of different companies. So, you know, large listed global firms to, you know, like a private equity backed, or, you know, or a local UK firm, let's say, whatever. But I think a lot of the big regional roles we do, they don't mind necessarily where they're based. You know, a VP HR for Europe, you know, general manager for Europe, a sales director for, you know, we're doing a sales director for EMEA, LATAM, APAC right now, and the client doesn't mind where they're based. You know, so I think there's a lot of those roles where they don't really mind. They want to find the best talent. They're regional anyway. So there's a lot of companies that just don't mind. The same token, I am seeing here a lot of companies want people back in, you know. I mean, obviously, let's leave aside the jobs where you actually need to go into work, right? Like doctors, nurses, etc. Right? I mean, these are just fantastic people that have always needed to go in. So I think if you're in a conversation about you could work remote, hybrid, whatever, it's a real privilege. You should count yourself. It's a great way to be able to work, right? To choose how and when you work and stuff. But I am seeing certain industries want people back. You know, like certainly like banking, insurance. You know, I'm seeing a lot of conversations in those industries, for example, where they want people in. And even in the US, like, you know, like Goldman's, and for example, you know, they're quite public in saying we want people in, whatever it is, 4 days a week. And London, you know, I am seeing the same. Again, it depends maybe on the function. You know, some functions, there's a variation in function, you know. So, you know, some of the tech stuff that you do, Ed, you know, maybe they're a little bit more, okay, you know what? Yeah, you know, let's meet up every once a week or whatever. So if there's a variation in it, I think there's also a lot of conversation about where people are more productive. Some people think they're remote, other people think they're lazy, they should be in the office. You know, there's a whole raft. And I think for me, where I land on it all, and you know, we are a fully remote organization ourselves and haven't always been. And I think for me, from my perspective, it's been wonderful. I've been able to, we've got a great team, and, if I made everyone come into London, we wouldn't have the folks that we do. So, but I also am aware that it doesn't suit everyone. And I've tried to recruit for us a bunch of people, and the comment was, oh, hey, where's the office? We
Right.
come in the office. I'm like, we don't have an office. We have got a wonderful culture, a lot of digital stuff, and so there's no one size fits all. I think as a business leader, you have to do what's right for the company, and obviously that means what's right for your team, your people, because a company's made up of people, and depending on what you do and what industry you're in and stuff like that. And so I think that's where we're kind of at. And then as an individual, again, right, like the key is it's all about finding the person for the right job, and the person, it's about finding the right company for you. What's important for you, find that. And if you're the company, we want to find the right people that will thrive in our organization. And then, so for us, that means people that are happy to work fully remote. And I think that's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would I would add, I was reading in a very interesting article, you mentioned it before, Fortune. And they had a very interesting article about return to office. And some of the numbers Fortune had was around, and I like to look at data, because obviously, if I am an optimist as well, just like you, but I like to look at the data, and I think the article talked a little bit about 42% of companies, with return to office mandates witnessed a higher level of employee attrition than they had anticipated, right? And 29% of companies really who enforced office returns are struggling with recruitment, right? So that's a third, right? And then commuting cost is up, cost about $2,000, 40 hours more than before the pandemic, right? And, so when you start to look at data like, um, it starts to really resonate in terms of what that employee experience feels like, right? Um, I read another Greenhouse article, that talked about, almost 80% of employees stand ready to leave their jobs if the company eliminates flexible work schedules. And this is all U.S., right? Um, so it's very interesting to see the dynamic, how different it is, from a UK perspective, and what's happening here in the US.
Yeah.
Cultures are very different in terms of the lines that are drawn in the sand.
They are different. And I would just want to maybe just add, like, that there's obviously cultural differences in different countries and all of these things, but we are also all human. And I think there's also a lot of similarities. I think I'm seeing, like we're great in that we have, we both get the benefit of hearing other people's perspectives from our colleagues and hiring in different countries. Stuff. So I think there's certainly, like, there's nuance between the US and other countries and the UK and everything, for sure. And then I think there's also these macro trends, like these human trends. and I'm seeing this, this remote one as an example, because, we have as we've got a company in India. We've got a teammate in India about to hire another one. And again, even there, in India, in APAC, it's still, there's a conversation about remote to office, how people want to work. It's very similar to what we're hearing here, to what you're talking about in the US. So yeah, it's fascinating, these trends. And also maybe, again, like social media, I think plays its part in it, because you can be in any country and you can really educate yourself about what American culture is talking about, and one of the key topics. You can dive into TikTok, you can dive into LinkedIn, whatever, and you can just learn what's going on, and you can listen to these conversations. And I think it's maybe, I don't know whether it's catalyzed some of these trends globally, but I think that it's all quite interesting. on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like I said, you know, it's get the popcorn and the candy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? Because the yeah, because the way this continues to evolve, it's being driven by human behavior,
yeah,
and you know, organizations are going to, you know, and like I said, with return to the office, the economy moving in the right direction. And like I said, I like to look at the data, not to say that all the data is positive, but most of the data is positive, right? Around the financial, you know, health of the economy. Others will have other points of views, um, you know, that are more pessimistic or critical of what's happening. Um, but there are some data points that you just can't miss. And I think it's gonna, you know, with what's happening in the market, what's happening with return to office, it's gonna be really interesting on how companies hire for the next 4 quarters. I think
definitely.
I think the next 4 quarters are gonna be a lot of fun for recruiters. So if you're a recruiter that's out there, um, and you're looking for that, you know, next opportunity, just I would say be relentless. Um, you know, keep the eyes open on a swivel, and just know that, you know, the next wave of hiring is coming, and our time is coming, and our time is here now. Um, you know, so
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if you want to work in an awesome boutique agency that's fully remote, drop us a note. Always happy to chat.
absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely. Last thing. Let's cover LinkedIn. We want to talk about LinkedIn just from
Sure.
a perspective of whether you're looking for work or looking to hire someone. I mean, you know, like it's just. I think it's I mean, a lot of people use it. I think it's a fabulous platform, but I think also there's awful lot of people that underuse it. Like they don't use it enough. Um, Ed, what do you think on just kind of an overall thought on its effectiveness to maybe to both like look for work and also, you know, position yourself as a hiring manager or, you know, a company that people want to work for?
Sure. And this is and the response I'm going to give here is more of a personal perspective of what I've seen, because I've been using LinkedIn since 2000, since the first year of in the 2000s, and I don't want to eat myself too much. But you know, LinkedIn has found a way, over the years on a year by year basis to be one of the social media platforms to consistently keep it purely business, right? They've had the ability to build a network of millions of people, um, and organizations and businesses that keep it completely business, and that has absolutely been wonderful. So kudos to LinkedIn. If you're out there, know that LinkedIn has a lot of different tools in terms of how you get your background out there. Look at it as a marketing platform, um, another way, you know, to market your resume, to market your experience. You can put up videos. You could put up attachments that, you know, if you have a resume, but you can also attach a bio. There are so many ways to leverage LinkedIn, that I think candidates don't even think about. There's automation. There's, you know, LinkedIn has its own AI and its own algorithms that are associated with the platform. So there are some amazing things that you could do as a candidate, you know, leveraging LinkedIn, and most organizations that are in the US and globally are leveraging LinkedIn as a powerful recruitment tool.
Absolutely.
Kudos to LinkedIn for having the ability to keep it intact, keep it as a professional business network. Um, and on the recruiting side, right?
Can I just dive in with a quick bit of advice on for the candidate? Just as I mean, I agree. I think it's great. Obviously, Microsoft own it, and we should see how it evolves and stuff. But I think if you're looking for work, I mean, it's the modern day cocktail party, and you can do it from home, right? So it's just a wonderful place because if you think about it, your next team member, your next boss, they're on LinkedIn. They're all on there, right? So it's a great place to be found. So the profile, they're all public, and recruiters and internal recruiters, whatever, they will find you. If you've got the right keywords and all of that kind of stuff. The other great thing is use it for networking. So, like, for example, if you're out of work right now and you're looking for a IT developer job or something, jump on there, right? Jump on there and start to engage and have conversations. And you can do that by search for content that's relevant to your industry, right? Whatever it might be. Stick it in the search bar at the top. You can then sort it by posts. So all the posts with this keyword that you've searched for will come up. And then you can start liking and commenting on all of the content, and people will start to see you, and you'll start to position yourself as an expert, and you'll have these virtual conversations which you can have from home, and then let's say you find you find someone that you really want to work for, and you see that they're hiring and they're making content, and you can jump on and you can start liking their content, and they'll be like, oh, who's this Ed liking all of my content? Oh my god, and then you're commenting, and then suddenly you can slip them a DM, hey, love your content. Actually, I'm looking for a new role right now. Would love to have a virtual coffee. When are you free? I guarantee you're going to get 9 out of 10 people saying, "Oh my God, Ed, of course I'd love to chat with you." So do that. It's a really good way. It's free. It costs you nothing, and it's incredibly powerful. And so just a good way to go about doing it, I think. So anyway, hiring. Ed, what do you think?
From a hiring perspective, I mean, I think if you don't have LinkedIn, you're going to miss a significant portion of the market. It's extremely important for recruiting teams, external teams, to have that ability to be able to market themselves, not only find candidates. I mean, you could kind of flip it the other way. There are candidates that are driving content. It is a pure marketing platform. And frankly, for a small investment up front that most organizations should be doing, why not get a complete snapshot of who's in the market, right? I would say if you're a moderate user and you have a couple of hundred connections leads to several thousand, hundreds of thousands of second and third connections, right? Now, if you're a recruiter and you have 5,000 connections, you better believe you have millions of second and third level connections. And you can drive content. You could drive, newsletters. You could put up videos. You can put up, there's just an entire world of business-focused social media that you can take advantage of. And a lot of it is free, right? It's free for the candidate. And it's, the majority of it's free for most companies. Now, on the candidate side and on the company side, if you make a little investment, it opens up to all of the automation tools and everything that LinkedIn has to offer. I think if you don't have it, you're probably not doing, I don't want to say that it should be your all too, because through research, search firms like us, we find a lot of candidates through, concrete research in the industries that we support. So there is a portion of the work that I do that I leverage LinkedIn as a research tool as well, but there are some other tools that I use for research as well. But I think it's a core tool that every recruiter, every TA, every talent advisor needs. But there are some other tools that you can leverage depending on the level of search that you're working on for research purposes, that you can find people that are maybe not on LinkedIn. I would say, though, 80 to 90% of the people that you need to find are there.
Yeah. And also, if you're trying to attract candidates, I mean, it could be the difference that makes a difference. If a candidate's looking you up on LinkedIn and everyone looks everyone else up on LinkedIn before they might interview or meet them. And if you're a hiring manager and you're not active on LinkedIn, you've got a handful of connections, whether you like it or not, it's the first impression. It's this digital first impression. Can you imagine you put that next to someone who, they're posting fairly regularly, they're liking and commenting on people's stuff, they're engaged in the conversation, and then it's a whole different ballgame. And then suddenly people are like, whether you'd have to do video, but they might watch your video, or they might read something you've written, or a comment, or they've seen a poll you've done. And this is just, again, as you mentioned, like, it's free to do content. It goes out to the ether. It's available publicly. And if you're trying to attract candidates, and as we kind of addressed right at the beginning of this talent talk, we both feel that it's going to be tough for companies to hire the best talent, right? Like, we're kind of wandering into a moment where you've got to do all you can to secure the right talent. And I think this is is just such a wonderful tool to be able to do it as people do their research on you, their due diligence. It's impressive. And if you're sharing stuff online like this, I think it's a good thing. So I would advocate for it myself. And I think also it's interesting because just comparing it to other, because there's also other social media platforms, right? Obviously TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X now. So all good stuff. I think the interesting thing with LinkedIn is, as you mentioned, it's professional. People keep the comments and the conversations professional. It's not a kind of cesspit of, everything bad with humanity that some of the other platforms like kind of go into, because you can be anonymous and stuff on some of these others. But this is pretty much, most of the profiles are genuine. They're people that are wanting to promote their career, make something of themselves, and things like that. So I think it's a good place to be on.
Yeah, I mean, all excellent points, Lewis. When we think about the resume, let's just talk about that for a second. When you think about the resume, and you could just Google this, when was the resume created? In the early 1900s, right? And so that means the resume, we've been using the same format of the resume since the early 1900s. So let's fast forward a little bit. So imagine now you have a platform where you can showcase your skills, you can put out marketing content, you can put up videos, you can do everything that you would do on a resume. It's basically taking the resume and it's put it on steroids, right? You can now showcase who you are, and vice versa, right? For organizations, right? It used to be a website. It's like, what's the organization's website? And I think even with websites, LinkedIn has found a way to incorporate, showcasing companies, right? And employees showcasing their experience through their companies on LinkedIn. So if you want to see a little bit about their culture as an organization, as a candidate, you have the ability to look up people that currently work at that company, and you can look at their videos. You can look at what they do from an external perspective when they go out for events. So you can do your own research. The platform works, on both sides of the coin. So like I said, kudos to LinkedIn for really building a platform that great for the candidate, great for companies. And together, it's really driving the digital footprint in terms of what the candidate needs to look like and what companies should be showcasing as an organization.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not sponsored by LinkedIn, just in case you're wondering here.
We are not sponsored by LinkedIn.
We're not sponsored by LinkedIn. But no, it's good. It's good. And I think my final point on it is and I know you love data. And so I think it's also really good to learn how, like, what you're worth, and like what jobs are around, and what are your peers doing, and who's hiring, and again, it's just a really great place to find out what's going on in your sector, jobs, pay, just what, just current stuff that's going on, because there's a lot of it posted. And so again, like, follow hashtags that are relevant to you. And it's just a good place to learn, right? Because we all want to continue to learn and develop. I think it's just, cornerstone of just a good life and career and things like that. And again, LinkedIn is quite a good place to do that. So, use it as a resource, use it as a networking, use it as a place to be found, all that stuff. And yeah, it'd be a good spot. Ed, good chat. Thank you for, love it. Thanks for sharing all of your thoughts as always.
Always, Lewis. I mean, anytime I have an opportunity to do this with you, and it was wonderful to get a US and the UK and a global perspective on some of the things that are happening out in the market, some of the tools, what our clients are saying, how they're prepping us. I mean, it's always great to be able to connect with you, Lewis. We really need to do it more. I know that we're servicing our clients. We're busy as ever. And the clients that are out there that are being proactive, I have to applaud them, for taking those actions and bringing us in. And, it's just, we're really moving in the right direction, sort of that curve upward. And, it feels really good to know, that you're seeing the same thing happen, outside of the US, and we're seeing it here happen in the US. Great partnership. Thank you so much, Lewis. It's great to partner with you. Anytime you need me to do this, get together with you, I'm always ready to have a great chat.
Well, we're making a promise to folks. I mean, we do this often. We're going to do it more often. And I think it's also good because we'll be honest. There's a lot of grim news and fake news knocking around. And I think for us, we'll just give it straight. This is our perspectives. This is what we're seeing on, from the front line of recruiting, which we're on somewhere. So it's great. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. And if you want us to chat about anything or share insights, just drop us a DM and we can do some stuff. So thanks everyone for joining and see you all soon.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you. See everyone.